Hey there guys, Driver02 here, and I'm coming to you today with a bit of hopefully helpful advice if you have trouble with your Silverado and more specifically the fuel control module, or the FSCM is what the whole system is called. So my truck suddenly wouldn't start one day. But I did a fair bit of diagnosing, and I'm not 100% sure if it's my module that has failed or if it's something else in the ECU or the fuel control system that is not allowing it to turn on. So upon doing massive amounts of reading online, I figured a way to hotwire the fuel pump, and lo and behold, the fuel pump turned on and the truck ran relatively just fine, idling in the driveway anyway. And so then it got me thinking, well, why can't I just install a relay and, hotwire it and have the ignition trigger the relay to turn the fuel pump on? Bada bing, bada boom, And so I had to do a lot of research, and I'm going to explain why I think this is going to be probably okay. But a lot of people out there say you can't do this and it won't work, but this is going to be a bit of an experiment. And so these trucks use a fuel pump that is a pulse width modulated fuel pump. And so generally the truck and the ECU and the FSCM and whatever else controls the fuel pressure simply by pulsing the fuel pump with pulses of current or electricity or a frequency. I'm not quite sure on all that. But from my research, if you run it at a constant 12 volts, then the pump itself will run roughly at 50%. So this will give you pretty much optimal performance most of the time. Maybe if you're flooring it or if you're accelerating on the highway and you step on it really hard, it's not going to have... It might not have the fuel pressure to keep up with the engine. And my understanding is that this whole fuel control system would use certain frequencies to overdrive the pump, and that's how they would get that high pressure, high demand fuel flow out of the pump when needed at like full throttle. So running at 12 volt constant doesn't actually run it at high pressure. However, it's running it at a higher pressure than normal under like low load conditions and idle, etc., etc. And the reason that it will still work out fine is that the engine can still, using the injectors, lean out the mixture enough to not flood the engine. And so far, I haven't driven the truck at all. I've only driven it in my driveway. But it seems like it might work. Although maybe once the truck reaches like operating temperature and maybe it goes into closed loop or whatever, maybe it's going to start to have issues with that fuel control module not being active. So I don't know. Like I say, this is a little bit of an experiment because I honestly don't see... I haven't, from my research, I haven't seen anyone else that's done this. So... at least with results. So that's what I'm doing, and I'll show you the relay and how I wired it into the truck without cutting the factory harness. Okay, so this is the relay. It's just a generic, little relay plug-in harness kit you get from an auto parts supply. There's the diagram that you got to follow, and all the terminals are numbered on the relay so you can wire it appropriately. But for the one I've got, the yellow wire is unused. The green wire, that's my trigger wire. You can see I got it just wired up to this red wire, which I ran all the way from under the dash. I had to find a keyed on ignition power. And up here at our plug, your main power is the blue wire, and that is coming from this big red wire here, if you follow it. And then ground, I think, is another black wire in there. Hard to really see. Yeah, you can see the bigger black wire right there going in to the big terminal. And then on the other end of the plug from your relay, you've got your red wire. That's the red wire right out of the relay harness. And then that ground is same as this guy. I've got it pigtailed, and it just goes over and gives it ground. And now if you follow the color of these wires, it can get confusing, because if this side is that big red and white wire I showed, and to just jumper your fuel pump, all you need to do is take some jumper wires and go from this terminal to that terminal, and then this terminal to that terminal, and then the pump will constantly be on. And that's a good way to diagnose if your pump is working or not. But it gets confusing because here it's the red wire, and back there that's actually a black wire in this factory harness. And on the other side, where you put the ground in, that's actually a red wire. So I initially wired this backwards, but I just had to switch those two terminals. And let me show you with one of these. I just used like little spade connectors, and they fit in to the big connections on your fuel control module plug. Oops, I'll have to get that with two hands in a second. But that way you can wire it up without cutting anything off, and you can always go back to using this if you want to in the future. So here's a diagram of the connector underneath the truck, and you're looking straight into the face of the connector as if that's it right there. That's what we're looking at here. And the wiring harness is coming in from this end. So all your wires are coming in from here. And if you remember, underneath the truck, I pointed out the red and white striped wire, and then there was a black one beside it. Those two are your main power connections. That's the two big terminals on the end. And if you want to bypass everything and just hot wire your fuel pump, all you got to do is run a jumper from there to there, and then from the black one here, straight across. And if you look at the wires that these two terminals are connected to, they're actually opposite of this end, whereas this one is actually black and this one is actually red. And so when I first tried this, I crisscrossed because I thought red would go to red and black would go to black, but that's not the case at all. So that's what we're going to be doing underneath, and I'm essentially going to do that, but have a relay also making the connection for me, because if you just jumper this, then it'll be on all the time, even if your key is off. This here is always live. So I'm going to try and include a photograph of this in the video, so that if you want to take a screenshot of it, you can print it off and use it for reference yourself. And here's all the pin numbers as well. So it starts with the big terminal right here, number 1, and goes all the way down to this guy is 16. And then let's see. Oh, here, and then it comes back up here, number 17. We got number 31 there. And it must come back up to here. Oh, actually it comes back up to here, number 32. Then down all these little pins, and then this last big one here is number 47. Oh, and I made a note up here that pin 15, or yeah, so I think that guy is supposed to be powered by fuse 56, but I wasn't getting power there, I don't think. I don't know. I can't remember exactly now, but under the dash, under that dash panel, which I will show. If pink is your ignition, brown is your accessory. I couldn't actually find those. I just tapped into the radio. Okay, so silent. If we turn our key on, no, I can hear it. Can you hear that? So the fuel pump is running. And there we go. So that, in effect, is a fuel system control module delete, or bypass, or whatever you want to call it. So really, if that avoids having to deal with that expensive fuel system module repair every few years or so, I'll gladly just do that. Now, I don't know how good it is to run the pump off 12 volts, but like I say, it's not running at full pressure all the time, but it's definitely not running at low pressure either. It's about 50%. I don't know. We'll see. But there, it's idling just fine. It's not flooding. It's not sputtering. It'll rev just fine. It's good and responsive. Not rolling coal. So that's how I'm attempting to repair this anyway. And I need this truck running. I can't be messing around forever. I spent a few weeks just diagnosing, trying to understand what was going on with this fuel module thing, and checking fuses and probing wires and stuff. And it's, you know, it's a little bit beyond me. I know electrical, but oh man. But I managed to figure out enough to bypass it, so fingers crossed that this will work. And so I've just got it temporarily, you know, it's just hanging underneath there, but I'll just throw it in gear and show you that it does move on its own power. But I'm gonna tape everything up and see, like, it's, people said that it wouldn't even run, your gauges wouldn't work, all this stuff, but it seems to be working just fine. So I don't know, but it's working. And here's the red wire I ran. I had to take this lower panel off, and I actually spliced it into the radio circuit. So when, you know, you turn your key on and the radio comes on, the pump will come on. And it's just underneath all the sills, and I ran it out a hole in the back, all the way over to the fuel pump. You can just see it right there. So now I'm gonna tape up those wires, tape up that connector, get everything protected so no water and road salt and dirt and grime get into it, or do my best to prevent that. And tape those wires down so they stay in that connector, and zip tie everything up, and hopefully that will be a long-lasting repair. So if anyone knows more than me, or anyone knows better, by all means, please chime in the comments there and let me know if you think this is going to work, or is the pump going to fail after a couple hundred miles, or, you know, what am I looking at now? Because I can understand that it might burn out the pump, but I'm hoping it won't, but who knows, right? But then maybe I just get an aftermarket pump that will be better suited to running all the time, I guess. I don't know. We'll see what happens with it, but I think for the cost of like a $12 relay kit, I'm better off right now just going with that versus getting a rusty old truck towed to a dealership to pay thousands of dollars. That's the way I look at it. And from what I've been told, that's what it will cost here in Canada. So, I mean, I could have spent the, maybe, I don't know, I think it's like $350 for a replacement module that is plug and play, but I already did that once and it only lasted a few years. So unless it's something else that's failed in the system, in which case I'd be looking at even more money at a dealer to replace the module and then replace other stuff. Could be something in the ECU, but who knows? So anyways, I hope you guys found this information useful, and by all means, chime in what you think. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, well, I will see you then.